Today on the 1% podcast, we are excited to welcome Garrett Kroon. Garrett is a psychotherapist specializing in helping people with relationship issues, personality issues, and learning how to navigate the world around them. Garrett is a native of Nampa, Idaho, and has lived in multiple places around the world. He has a very unique story about his upbringing and experiences that have happened to him throughout his life that help give him perspective and insight into helping people deal with their challenges in their life. So we're excited to have Garrett on the podcast with us today.
If you are terrified of rejection, if you're terrified to be yourself out in the world, start organizing your life. Where is your spiritual life? Now, that doesn't mean you got to come to church with me on Sunday, but what drives meaning? And I really believe that one of our core and key human issues is our lack of ability to tolerate well the feeling of powerlessness and ambiguity. The worth of your soul is not dependent on how many points your son scores in the Crash the Board tournament on some random Saturday in April. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Garrett Kroon, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you and I go way back a little bit. I knew you because you were a few years younger than me.
In high school, yeah.
In high school. The first thing that I remember about you was, I think I was a senior and you're like a freshman or something.
Probably.
But I remember that you were like freakishly strong. I just remember being in the weight room and we're like testing and, I kind of thought that I was really strong at the time. And, anyway, I'm like, don't usually notice freshmen. I just remember wow, this kid's really strong. And anyway, then I remember a couple years later seeing like numbers he had up on the weight room boards and stuff. So that was my first impression of you. And then I got to coach you a little bit.
It's a way of life, man.
Yeah.
I loved it. That was the best. Good time.
And then I got to coach you the next year before I was doing my mission. So I got to come back and help coach. And so I got to work with you a little bit there. And anyway,
it seems like forever ago now.
It does. But it's been fun to kind of rekindle and getting to be around you more. For those of you at home, so Garrett also coaches youth football. You coach in my Warriors Football Club organization. You have a son on our 10U team. Is he 10 or 9?
9. Yes,
9.
Man. Yeah, coaching 10U is awesome.
Yeah.
It's just the excitement for football. There's so much learning going on.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to figure out if they're on offense or defense.
Yeah. But this is, something that you were like built for, right? Like working with young people. We'll get into that here in a minute, but that's what you love and that's what you're built for, and you love working with
youth, man. Yeah, I do.
So no, it fits perfect. We love talking about people's origin, their story. I think it just helps people connect and to get to know you. So let's jump right into that. Tell us about your family. You have a really unique story, and I think something that would surprise a lot of people, but just kind of jump in and tell about your family of origin, parents, family, what that looked like growing up.
Yeah, man, my family's weird. It's awesome, but it's a unique thing. And
unique. I think unique is fair.
Yeah, it's unique, man. Yeah, it's the makeup of it is often kind of confusing for people. When I run into people in the community, they regularly ask like, wait a second, so who are your parents?
Yeah,
and the answer is a few people.
Yeah,
and it's kind of fun that way. And so my birth parents divorced when I was young. They split up, and my mom remarried. I was eventually adopted by my stepdad. He adopted me, and then
how old were you when that?
I think I was 7.
Okay,
I was probably 7 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a Green Beret, and so we lived on Fort Bragg, and then just outside of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Born here, in Boise, grew up as a little guy in Nampa, and then down in the South in Tennessee, they had my 2 half brothers, who they're my brothers.
Yeah.
My mom struggled mightily. She had a lot of struggles. She had health struggles in the form of lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease that just really wrecked her body. And then she also struggled mentally and emotionally. Clearly a person that struggled with a mood disorder. Bipolar.
Did you notice that when you were a little kid?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't have the words for it.
Sure.
But
how did that manifest? Like, what were her
chaos.
behaviors that you saw a lot?
Yeah, chaos. Which eventually turned into alcohol use, prescription pills, things like that.
And when you say chaos, are there any maybe specific instances or genres of things. I think that so many people don't know what this looks like, right?
Yeah. So
maybe
now, right, as in my profession, I'm in sort of an expert.
Yeah, you're highly skilled at being able to.
The mood disorders. Yeah, mania and depression.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when my Green Beret dad was deployed off to Kenya or the Middle East or wherever it was, there'd be wide swaths of time where she couldn't get out of bed, and then there were other times where it was like Disneyland, and some of that was the chaos of mania and depression. So high highs, very confusing, often impulsive, and that word chaotic, and then really low lows. That as a little guy were oftentimes pretty scary.
Yeah.
I didn't have the language for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do now as an adult.
And you really don't have any other benchmark.
No,
it's like that's all you
yeah,
know.
Really, we lived in the woods.
Yeah.
We had this amazing place in the woods. There were deer around and a creek running through the backyard. And so a lot of time it was just kind of me there with these two babies and two really little kids, my brothers, and then my mom, who I think, given the struggles that she had, did something like her best.
Yeah.
But the alcohol use really, really escalated and got incredibly chaotic. And then eventually we left the South, and my dad left his military career to take care of her. And just a few days later, she passed away of an overdose, and alcohol use just wrecking her organs.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 10.
Yeah. So by 10 years old, your parents have already divorced. You've been adopted by your stepdad. You've moved multiple times. At 10 years old, your mom dies of a drug overdose. You're now living with two younger siblings, two younger half brothers, and your dad who's adopted you.
Yeah.
And you guys lived in Utah for a while?
Yeah, we're in Utah just for a bit. Really, we just went there because that's where she got sick and passed away, and I had grandparents there. We stayed there for a little bit. And then
got you moved back here.
Yeah, then we ended up back in Nampa, the promised land. Yeah.
So here you are, you come walking into middle school, and no one knows this, right? Like people don't understand that.
Yeah, elementary school first, right? Then middle school. Yeah, kind of a weird deal that you're the kid that shows up. I always said, like, if you show up in like October in the 5th grade someplace, like, your life probably isn't going super great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And then later, just after Christmas break, I showed up to elementary school in Nampa. I was really fortunate that one of the teachers there actually knew my family.
Okay.
And she ended up being my teacher the following year, Mrs. Brocky. And she just showed up and was just so kind, pulled me aside, said, if you need anything, and I was fortunate to be surrounded by just some like really good, normal, sweet kids.
Yeah.
That were really kind.
No, that's amazing. So your dad remarried.
And
okay.
I got
how old were you?
That would have been 11 or 12.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I got 3 stepsisters, so we Brady bunched it.
Okay.
The 3 boys and 3 girls. Then middle school, and which is the most chaotic place that any human has ever been.
Yeah.
In the history of the world.
Yeah.
School.
So go through middle school, go through high school. Obviously, most people don't have any idea about this. I mean, knowing you, I didn't. Right? So I had no idea. Yeah, right. So I had no idea. In fact, I didn't even know about any of this until just a short time ago. So after high school, you go on a LDS mission for 2 years. You served a mission in Mozambique.
Yeah.
Have some unique experiences there, I guess, to say the least.
From malaria to Giardia to breaking my ankle twice to I spent a little bit of time in jail for a couple of days. Just all kinds of things that you might not experience serving a mission. Here, I don't know, in the Boise, Idaho mission. It was a different,
or Southern California, as I did, right? Like,
maybe similar weather.
Yeah. So you come home from your mission. What did life look like after that? What were the next steps?
Well, transitioning that back into the real world, so to speak, after living in Africa, was a super interesting experience. I tell people that go spend time, especially in a place, say Mozambique, the Congo, something like that. It's like going to Mars. There's nothing that really is like it at all in the States. We talk about poverty or struggles or trials systemically, and we just really don't have any idea.
Yeah,
it's a completely different universe. That experience there set up the rest of my life. Every decision and everything that I have in my life right now that is even remotely good is because of that experience. The relationship that I developed with Jesus during that time. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a ton about myself. Some of that was just learning how to be with people that weren't really like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a church thing, but I didn't grow up really motivated to go to church. In fact, I spent a lot of time, and one of the reasons you saw me in the weight room all the time was I spent a lot of time creating shields around myself. Because I had this hole in my chest shaped like my mom.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. I had no idea. And so I, for the most part, as a middle schooler and a high schooler, I was just seeking external validation. I was trying to justify my existence.
Sure.
And I didn't always maybe get that justification and compassion and care from the people that I probably wanted and needed it from the most. And so I looked to external sources.
And you're not doing any of that consciously. You're
No.
just...
That's,
Yeah.
And we see that you sit down with the teenager that might be struggling. And I always say that I guarantee that they make perfectly good, unfortunate sense. In fact, a lot of our youth that don't look like they're struggling at all, as a psychotherapist, I have the opportunity to sit down just like this, less microphones, brighter lights, just a regular room. And you'll find that a lot of them have a lot of heavy stuff in their chest and on their shoulders. But we live in a world where we don't really talk about that stuff. And so as a teenager, my nervous system unfortunately learned that if I could just be good at stuff, then I could feel accomplished, validated, and safe. I had no idea that I felt that. But now looking back, it's like, well, I sure did spend a lot of time in those weight rooms.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in there. I spent a lot of time trying to be, whether it was good at powerlifting and then, winning state championships and competing on a national level or on the football field, where you and I spent time together, that there was so much of that. Brene Brown calls it a 10-10 shield, that we try to create and craft this identity through things that we do or that we can achieve or do rather than who we really are.
Yeah.
Because so often there's many of us that are just hurting.
Yeah.
And the hurt, right? I'm not trying to play suffering Olympics with anybody.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I learned living for a couple of years in Mozambique. I'm not going to win the suffering Olympics with anybody, that's living in an impoverished third world country. But my nervous system, this is something I love to talk about, the nervous system. My nervous system learned subconsciously that if I could, and this is, grab a teenager, many of them are feeling this too. If I could just be the thing that I was like supposed to be, then I could feel okay.
Yeah.
I could feel okay.
Yeah.
And that would range from, the clothes that you wear to the activities that you put into the grades that you get. And if I can have these external sources that say, hey, Garrett, you're good enough right now, then it would, for a moment, fill that hole in my chest that said like, hey, there's something missing, something not right, that not good enough. I call it the devil's doctrine of not good enough.
Yeah.
That so many of us carry inside of our chests.
So you come home from your mission, you start to kind of become conscious of some of these things, it sounds like.
Little by little.
And then you decided to go to school. Did you know that was what you wanted to go study right away?
No. Before my mission, I was pre-law.
Okay.
I didn't know that you could be a counselor.
Okay.
I didn't know that job existed. I knew that like psychologists, I have a great buddy, Daniel Gibson. He's a psychologist. I knew those guys.
Weeks. Yeah.
He's a genius. I knew that field existed, but I didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
I knew that I'd watched enough like Law and Order, but I knew like lawyers existed, And I met my wife, met her at church, and we got married. We actually got married really quick. We realized recently that we had both, made it sound like we had dated for longer than we had when we had told the story so many times that neither of us had any idea how long we actually dated.
Yeah.
And she had just been accepted to PA school to be a physician assistant.
Okay.
And so we're headed off to this medical school in Las Vegas, and going through that process with her, I was able to be around people that were thinking outside the box and academically and wanted to go pursue things and achieve things. And I realized I love people. I just love people. And eventually I met one person after another and found that the world of psychology and then counseling, psychotherapy specifically, was where I wanted to spend my professional life.
Cool. So she go to Las Vegas, go through PA school. You guys came back here, eventually go through school. What were kind of those next steps for you? And then what did you decide to kind of focus your business in? Obviously you work with young people a lot. And young adults?
Yeah. So grad school was a whole thing. Multiple years of just really dissecting yourself. To become a counselor, I guess if you're in a program that's good, you're going to spend a lot of time looking in the mirror and writing obscenely long essays about yourself, and not sort of in a narcissistic way, but in a dice yourself up, open up the hood, and really see what's underneath sort of way, which was, I think, is something that most of us never really do, because not because we don't want to, we just don't know how to, or we're so busy. And so that experience really helped me figure out what at least to get some ideas, some groundwork ideas with what I wanted to do with it. I had some great mentors. Dr. Cameron Priest was a wonderful mentor for me. And I was able just to pick these brilliant and compassionate and good people's brains to figure out what I want to do. And so I took the risk immediately to just go out on my own. I have some sort of phobia to having a boss, I think. I can't handle it.
I tell people all the time, I would make a really crappy employee for someone.
Yeah, I don't want a boss, man.
Yeah.
I love working with teens. I don't work with little kids. I love coaching little kids.
Yeah.
But I can like blow the whistle and we can get after it. I got a reputation for working with teens. It's actually not.
How did that start? Did you start doing that like in grad school, or did you know that was where you wanted to focus? Because
I didn't. I actually thought I didn't want to work with students at all. I love working with adults, and actually, right now, if you looked at my calendar, I think the majority of the people coming to see me in counseling are adults.
Okay.
But I did get the reputation, I think, in the community for being a bit of a teenage whisperer, so to speak. And I love working with teenagers. I think they get a bad rap. And I think some of my own personal experience colors my compassion and care that I bring to those teenagers. I think I just believe in them, and I watch a world that wants to label them as lazy because they play too many video games, or they're knuckleheads. They don't turn their homework in on time, or whatever it is. They have all these behaviors. We're so behavior focused.
Yeah.
And behaviors, I mean, like you coach football, like, you gotta, if you're supposed to step right, you gotta step right.
Yeah.
Like I'm fine correcting and modifying behavior. I believe in that. But I also think, again, that people make perfectly good, unfortunate sense. And if I can get to a place where I can allow somebody, especially a teenager, they can be pretty confusing to us as grown-ups. If I can just get to a place in empathy and compassion where I can allow them to make sense, then I can help them.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that almost, not every teenager that I've ever worked with, I've definitely struck out my fair share of times. But I really think that with the vast majority, almost all of them, I've been able to get to a point where at least I can say, yeah, man, you make sense. You make sense. It's I call it's too many words, but I call it the parable of the kid that does his homework but doesn't turn it in.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of my career, I was working with lots of teenagers, and I'd meet with parents, and they'd say, "Man, little Jimmy will." It's always little Jimmy too, right? That's the name.
Yeah.
Like some poor guy named Jimmy. Little Jimmy, he'll do his homework. He'll do the work, right? He'll do the math assignment or whatever it is, but it sits in his backpack, and he doesn't turn it in, and he'll say like, "Oh, I forget." And then knowing enough, cause I've been to a few years of school in my life. I'm like, no, I don't really buy that, because Mrs. Jones or whoever said, pass your homework up. And then 30 people passed up the assignment. You didn't forget to turn it in because you were right there when it was turned in.
There's something else.
Right? So there's something else going on. And the more I was able to sit in conversations like that, whether it's cleaning your room or the way that you talk to people or whatever it is, but with this homework thing, I realized that so many, and adults are this way too, but it's easier maybe to see it in teens at first. So many of us are willing to do the work. We're willing to do hard things. They're willing to do their multiplication assignment or whatever it is, but they're terrified of the evaluation. They're terrified of not being enough. They're terrified of not being good enough. And if they live in an environment that's based on outcomes, the worth of their soul is determined by their behavior, by their wins and losses, by their grades, whatever it is, or especially sometimes by the way the people that matter the most in their life, typically their parents, and that could translate to teachers and coaches and friends, speak to them and treat them, look at them, pay attention to them. If the worth of their soul is determined by that, they are going to be terrified all the time. And so all of a sudden you get little Jimmy, who would rather not turn in that assignment and get in trouble for something that he did, rather than be evaluated as something that he is. He'd rather be the bad kid that chooses to not turn in, I forgot, it's more like in his control, then turn in this assignment. He might have got them all right.
He tried his hardest on,
But
and then got told it wasn't good enough.
That risk of evaluation of seeing that red letter at the top of the page saying you were not good enough, you're not enough, is too much for so many of us. And adults, right? We talk about screen time and things like that. It's like, oh, kids and their screen time. It's like, yeah, I think older folks are spending way more time on Facebook than our teenagers are. Older folks are the grown-ups are just as guilty as kids of that. But we like to project it onto them. But so many of us, and maybe it's easiest just to talk about the youth, we are terrified of not being enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so often the messaging that world gives to us and these youth that I work with so often is, there's something wrong with you. You're not good enough. If you would just look different or be better at this thing or smarter or whatever it is, then we will accept you.
Well, I think it's interesting because I see a lot of kids and see a lot of adults the same way, that they never put forward their best effort at something, right? And for some of us that are maybe overachievers, that like bothers you, right? And like it bothered me for a long time, and I didn't understand that. It's like, why won't you just like try your hardest? Why is this so difficult for you? Like, so what? Like, if you get rejected, like, what's the big deal? Like, what's worse? Someone can say no, go move on to the next one, right? Like, and coming to that understanding that people are so afraid of rejection, of being evaluated, being told that they're not enough, that it can, I'm curious to get your take on this, but it seems to me that it can take a lot of different forms. And one of the ways that I see it a lot, particularly in teenagers, is that they act like they don't care. Like they just act like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Like, I just really don't care that much. And the more I look at them, like, I think you really do care.
Yeah.
I think you do care, but I think you care more about trying your hardest and being afraid that that might not be good enough and being labeled a failure, or feeling like you're a failure, someone else telling you that you're a failure, rather than to say, like, I tried my hardest, maybe it worked out, maybe it didn't. But most people just never do that, and they act like it's cool to not try hard. And that doesn't, that has never registered with me, but I'm curious to get your take on that.
I love talking about this more than most things. I love it. I read a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. You'd love it. Will Guiadara, I might have said his last name wrong.
Okay.
He's a restaurateur, and he took this restaurant, 11 Madison Park in New York City, from kind of failing, not a nice restaurant, but nothing maybe super spectacular, and with this strategy of making the hospitality experience at his restaurant completely ridiculous and unreasonable, he turned it into the number one restaurant in the world. And he wrote this book. And so there's this section in the book called "Make It Cool to Care." And I probably read this section of the book so many times that I could almost quote it.
Yeah.
I have it in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that to you. He said, "Make it cool to care." And he talked about how he had two groups of friends in college. He had the friends that he partied with and had a really good time with and kind of lived the college lifestyle. And then he had his friend Brian. And Brian was a bit eccentric. He came from a restaurant family, I think out of San Francisco. He had a gecko, right? Maybe a little bit of a peculiar guy. And he said that Brian had this way of doing things where he gave others around him permission to really go for it. He gave people permission to try really hard. And the author, the title of the section is just "Make It Cool to Care." And I haven't found very many concepts that have impacted me more than "Make It Cool to Care." I do a lot of consulting with athletic teams and companies in the world of leadership development, culture and leadership development. And without a doubt, if you're watching me give those presentations and run those workshops, I'm going to talk about making it cool to care.
Yeah.
There's something about people stepping outside of that. I have to be really cool. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? Stepping outside of that space and just making it really, really cool to be about that life. Making it really, really cool to care. With my 10U football team, we talk about it every single day. Make it cool to go as hard as you can, to try as hard as you can. Make it cool to really push yourself in that last sprint when you feel completely gassed. I spend a lot of time with a high school basketball team, and I love doing it. I volunteer my services with them, and really any time that They have time for me to come in. I'll clear whatever it is on my schedule and I'll go meet with these guys. I love them. And I watched as we started to implement some of these philosophies, especially this idea of making it cool to care, that the culture dramatically shifted. That came in large part from the top. The head coach really buying into the idea of making it cool to care, and all kinds of other really oneness and really a lot of other really great ideas. But I watched it go from a culture of finger pointing and blame and trying to just look really, really cool on the court, trying to be the really cool guy. Coach Gino Ariema talks about this with body language. That so many athletes are in, whether they're playing high school or college or AAU tournaments, playing basketball. If they don't have so many points, they're looking up and they're worried about getting in trouble on the way home, right? They didn't put up 20 points. What's the conversation going to look like on the way home? Well, they missed that shot in the third quarter. Their dad's going to go back and look at the film and critique it or whatever it is. And so then they get really afraid to try hard. And there's this thing that happens with people around you. If you can surround yourself with high quality people, that's brilliant. But that's tricky to do, especially for teenagers, because the pool of people you're going to pull from is pretty limited. Kind of that's what it is, right? We go to school.
Generally, just
you go to church.
You're geographically restricted, right? Yeah.
You're totally restricted. And so it requires one or two or three, just a handful of people, it could be one, to decide to make it cool to care. Because you're right that you point out that so many people are so, especially, and it's not just our youth, we keep saying that, but maybe it's easier to talk that way. They are so afraid of being rejected.
Yeah.
They're so terrified. And maybe they don't even know it. But behavior is language.
Yeah.
And you can watch it's a billboard screaming, I'm so afraid of not being enough. And that permission granting thing of saying, I'm just going to make it cool to care. I'm going to be about that life and just really go for it. Transforms lives, communities, cultures, teams.
Well, I think you see it in lots of different ways. I mean, maybe moving up from teenagers up to young adults, people in their 20s, 30s, getting married, right? Yeah. Dating. And I think that more now than ever, people aren't getting married, maybe not as much because they don't believe in it or because they saw their parents get divorced. There's other things they feel, disillusioned with the idea of marriage. I think that probably in most people's cases, particularly men, that they don't want to be rejected, right? Like to go put forward your best, to go try to, make an overture or something. And the thought of being rejected is more than a lot of people can take. Talk about how do people develop resilience, strength to overcome that sort of thing, changing that mindset. What do you see, whether that's teenagers, young people, or adults? Like you see it, people that don't fully engage in their marriages, they don't fully engage in their career, they don't go look to seize opportunities. What have you seen? How do people overcome that?
Oh, Cam, such a good question. We have created the loneliest society and the loneliest generation of all time. The rise of social media. Jonathan Haidt writes about this brilliantly, and his work really does show that our loneliness and the fear that we have of stepping out of line and committing some sort of social sin is limiting an entire generation of people from having authentic relationships. I think that there's this concept that it was initially coined by this economist, Nassim Taleb, and it's anti-fragility. He needed a word, and he speaks all these different languages. He's a super genius professor. And he needed this word that was something more than resilient. And so there's maybe three categories we can think about. That some things are fragile, like a teacup. When my daughter's second or third birthday, I went way too hard, and I got her this Japanese teacup set because she loved having tea parties with her dolls, and it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And as we were opening it, I remember thinking, this is a terrible idea.
These things are going to break all in a day.
Whether they're broken, right? A teacup is fragile. If it falls on the floor and breaks, nothing good happens. I guess people say oh, you could put it back together with the ancient whatever. It's no, it's broken, right? You got to throw it away. Then there are things that are resilient. In my house, we have a microwave in the oven, and then the next drawer down is just plastic bowls and cups. Most people have that drawer, right? It's kid stuff, right? Mm-hmm. They're indestructible. They're resilient. Now, you could probably drop some of those plastic cups and bowls 10,000, 50,000 times, and nothing happens. They're just going to bounce, pick them up, put them back in the drawer. But they don't get stronger for having been dropped. What Nassim Taleb was looking for was something that was more than that. Some researchers, like this guy, Tal Ben-Shahar, that I really appreciate his work, He says that anti-fragility is resilience 2.0. It's something that's more than resilient, like the muscular system, right? You lift weights, it breaks down, it gets stronger. The immune system, right? It gets exposed to things in the environment, it grows stronger. Companies that go through hard things, oftentimes they can grow stronger on the back end of it, right? My 10-year-old football players are doing conditioning, and it's awful. And through that struggle, they're becoming more than resilient. They're anti-fragile. And so that same researcher said that there's this way that we can unlock or trigger within us in a healthy way, the anti-fragile system, to become maybe more than we currently are. And it's this model he calls the SPIRE model. And I talk about it all the time. People probably get sick of me talking about it, but I think it's kind of like the way. SPIRE, it's an acronym: spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional well-being. And so those of us that struggle with that feeling of being, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being enough, oftentimes we need to get our life in order. We got to clean our room before we seek to go out and organize the world. And Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar talks about organizing our life in a way that maximizes our spirituality. You find meaning, what's meaningful, what's true and good, and more important than us. So it's not just us. Right now, I think that's where you find true purpose and worth, the worth of your soul. Physical, taking care of your physical body. Intellectual, that curiosity. That doesn't have to be going and getting degrees. That could be spending time in nature or with art, but exciting and nurturing the intellectual part.
Pushing your mind to be better and do better, yeah.
Relationships. There doesn't seem to be much that is more important than high quality relationships. And if we live in a society where it's the swipe of a finger is acceptance or rejection. And talk about men. And I was looking at the statistics of how many times a man is typically rejected before he gets a date.
Yeah.
On my date, it's astronomical.
Yeah.
It's totally crazy.
Yeah.
Relational and then emotional. I believe in the power of gratitude. I think that I learned that Cicero called it the mother of all virtues, the most important of all virtues. And in that SPIRE model, that E for emotional, I go first to gratitude. A practice of gratitude changes. It changes our neurochemistry. Just really, really interesting. There's a researcher out of the University of Pittsburgh that found that highly depressed people, over the course of 21 days of identifying daily three good things. And really, if you read the research, it's like three things that didn't totally suck.
Yeah.
Three things that were good, depressive symptoms improved. And so this gratitude practice, I tell people, if you are terrified of rejection, if you're terrified to be yourself out in the world, start organizing your life. Where is your spiritual life? Now, that doesn't mean you got to come to church with me on Sunday, but what drives meaning? What drives meaning in your life? Are you taking care of yourself physically? From hydration, nutrition, and sleep, and moving around? How's that going? Your intellectual life? Are you curious, or are you just scrolling on Instagram? Are you just getting a whole bunch of TikTok reels? Or are you curious about the world around you? What are the quality of the most important relationships in your life, and what can you do about them? What can you do to maximize the health and quality of those relationships? And then where's your emotional self? Maybe the person would benefit from going and talking to somebody that, like me, that helps walk people through that. And maybe sometimes we need to pause and zoom out and identify the things for which we can be grateful in our lives. And so that's a place that I start. Yeah. I get obsessed with this idea of anti-fragility.
Yeah.
That we can be more. We can be more than resilient. I believe that God made us to be beings that inevitably will encounter significant adversity, and that this power exists, I think, from Him and within us, that allows us to overcome those things, that to be made better.
Yeah,
than we might have
couldn't agree more. I mean, the entire purpose of life is to suffer, right? Like, everyone comes here and you're going to suffer. And it's what can we learn in the midst of that suffering, and what can we do because of that suffering that enables us to be sympathetic and empathic toward other people's suffering, and then be able to turn our suffering into meaning, and to be able to, help others with that, and to find good in the midst of that. I really think it is a beautiful concept when you understand you can take something that's terrible and awful. I mean, anyone could take, look at your example and say, man, this guy had a lot of terrible things happen to him early in his life. This guy went through a lot of hard things that most people don't go through. But being able to take that and take those lessons that you learn from that and then turn them into a way that, hey, I can go and help other people with this, right? I'm sure directly or indirectly that played some sort of a role in your, place where you found yourself in your career. But I think that's true for all of us, right? Like all the suffering that we go through, you're going to find someone along the line that has suffered similarly to how you have, or there are things that you have in common with them. And because of your experience, because of that suffering, because of the pain that you've been through, you can take that and you can go help someone else. I mean, really, it is, a beautiful concept when you think about it. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about in adults. Most of us grew up at a time where these types of lessons weren't taught, right? Like not because maybe you didn't have good parents or you didn't have, anything like that, but just the resources weren't available, wasn't as socially acceptable. Going and obtaining counseling or any type of psychotherapy or help wasn't really kind of, socially acceptable. So a lot of us grew up not taking advantage of anything like that or not even knowing. And so you get to a place in your life where you're now an adult. You see the world the way that you see it based on the set of circumstances and relationships and surroundings around you. But most things in life don't turn out to people's expectations, right? Like most people have a lot of unmet expectations in their life where their life has gone a very different way than maybe they thought. And so they are looking for some way to change that, but maybe don't know where to turn. What would your advice be for adults, whether that's coming and seeing you, turning immediately to gratitude, finding places, to go research and find information. I'm just curious on getting your take on this idea that you have most adults out in the world today that don't really have the tools or the skill set to be able to handle the challenges that they face, and what are the steps that they can take to go do that?
I love that. It's a really good question. As a real life human being, as Garrett Kroon, the real life human being, I try to never miss an opportunity to say what the deepest part of my core believes, which is the grace and goodness of Jesus Christ. That's the most important thing on the planet. And then beyond that, I love sitting across from adults that have recognized that portions of their life have become mismanaged or unmanageable. They've recognized that their emotional world is out of sync. They've recognized that they're full of shame or anger or anxiety or depression. And I love being able to step into that space that is actually, it feels almost sacred in a way to sit across from somebody and to sometimes to barely know them and say, welcome to my office. This is where I kind of live, have a seat on the couch or whatever it is. And so, help me understand. And then hearing their story. I love helping people to learn to try to be really honest with themselves, to just be honest with themselves. How do I experience other people and how do other people experience me? And what might be influencing the way that I experience other people in the world and the way that other people experience me? What's going on inside of my nervous system? How do I respond to things? When something's a little out of place in my house, if I come home at the end of the day and if there's too many Legos on the floor or if the kitchen's a mess, do I freak out? Do I get dysregulated in that moment or whatever it is? If somebody cuts me off in traffic, am I yelling and screaming at them even though they can't hear me? What's going on? What's going on inside of me? I think a lot of people, because of what they've experienced and their nervous system, they live at like a 6 or a 7, but they don't even know that. They have no idea. And so it just takes just a little bit to get to that 8 or a 9. That 8 or a 9 looks different probably for everybody, but I love being able to have authentic and honest conversations. I think so often people are really afraid of people's responses. They're really afraid to say, hey, the way that you spoke to me really hurt my feelings. Or, hey, sometimes the way that you speak to other people really hurts their feelings. If I'm a person, generally speaking, if I'm a person that the way that I talk to people hurts their feelings, I bet I'm somebody that also gets really defensive and really offended. My feelings get hurt pretty easily. And that's probably because what you're seeing from me are what we call protest behaviors. I recognize that humans live in a world of powerlessness and anxiety. Not always maybe anxiety that is clinically diagnosable. But we all have nervous systems. We all have a brain, and we all experience a certain degree of anxiety or even hyper awareness in our lives. I think all of us, we go through, something happens. So we could call that a trigger. Something happens, activates our nervous system. That could be a cue or a chemical in the environment or some sort of situation that reminds us of something internally. We might not even be aware of it. And then we experience powerlessness. And I really believe that one of our core and key human issues is our lack of ability to tolerate well the feeling of powerlessness and ambiguity. I tell the people that I work with that it's kind of silly that ambiguity is like a platypus. Just doesn't make any sense. I like nerded out on Google with the platypus. They got a duck face and a beaver tail, right? They have like otter feet.
Yeah.
They have like this poisonous thing on their leg. They can shoot electricity out of their face to like guide themselves underwater. And in like 2019, a graduate student at the Museum of Natural History, I think in New York, put one under a black light and it glowed. Like they glow, they're bioluminescent, which makes no sense. They lay eggs, they're mammals. They're weird, they don't make any sense. And our nervous system does not tolerate that well at all. We do not tolerate ambiguity well. We want to know what's going on. We want to be in control. And when we start to notice it, we notice it subconsciously. There's different parts of our brain that notice it, and that it initiates often an involuntary sequence of emotional and the behavioral events. And so that starts with anxiety, right? You experience some powerlessness, that ambiguity. I'm not in control. I lack data or support or free choice or agency in the situation that I'm in, whatever it is. I have a lacking, probably experiencing some ambiguity. I'm powerless. You will experience some anxiety. Your brain is going to do that, right? At the end of the day, we as human beings, we get scared in scary movies, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right? We think we're so perfectly rational all the time, and it's like we're not, and that's okay, but we're not. And then what happens is either we learn to identify that pattern within us, that emotion within us that pops up, that feeling that maybe either leads us to choose our values and who we want to be and how we've planned and decided and conditioned or trained ourselves to respond to adversity, or we protest. And when I think about protests, a protest behavior in my world is either a pursue or a withdraw. And a pursue move could be fight, and a withdraw move could be flight. But there's also sort of unlimited bullet points below that. And so that includes like getting really angry, yelling and screaming, what we call over-functioning, right? Trying to control everything. Or on the other side, maybe under-functioning and not wanting to deal with anything. Procrastination, avoidance, turning to substances or other things, scrolling on your phone, checking out. And people do that to try to establish that equilibrium and solve their problem of powerlessness. They're trying to solve it. They're doing their best. They don't have the skills or the tools to do it. And growing up, like, I don't know anybody that was like talking about that, like around the campfire with like trusted adults. I don't know a single person that was having those conversations in our generation. That's okay.
Yeah.
But learning that's what we do, right? Something happens, something within us, within our nervous system, it labels it. We get a perception of powerlessness. We feel anxious, and then we want to respond. And we sometimes we get really aggressive or we get really passive, and instead of leaning into our values, and oftentimes it's so subconscious that you'd have no idea. You just have no clue. I was listening to on YouTube John Deloney. He's in like the Dave Ramsey network of people, and I appreciate what he has to say online. And he was talking about a nuclear reactor in his chest. That certain times, certain situations, this nuclear reactor would come online in his chest. And it was just recently that I had the realization that was me, and that I had been experiencing that, but I didn't know. I had no idea. And the experience kind of mirrored this therapist online, what he was talking about. And I recently had the opportunity to be like really honest with myself about something. And it was my relationship with my daughter from when she was born until she was 3. And it's been something I've been chewing on for a couple of weeks, maybe. I'm still trying to figure out how to articulate it. But my daughter, Carly, who I love more than anything on the planet, wanted essentially nothing to do with me from the time she was born until she was about 3. She wanted mom and grandma. And that was kind of cute, right? Like, oh, like she doesn't like men too much and she wants to be with mom and grandma. I'm like, oh, that's fine. And we kind of joke like, oh, Carly doesn't really like dad too much. And, but now it couldn't be further from the truth. She demands that I snuggle her to sleep and read a story and whatever every single night. When I walk home at the end of the day, coming home from work, she mauls me, right? She's climbing me like a jumbo jet, right? And we're so close. She's out of town with my wife right now. They're up at the cabin, and I just can't wait to see her, my daughter. I just can't wait to see her. And I realized that everything changed when we did the daddy-daughter dance together. You know all about the daddy-daughter dance over the Spot Dance Studio, right? Everything changed. Just this little 3-year-old Carly, she started calling me her partner because I was her dance partner. Dad's my partner. And for the longest time, we just told that story. She just didn't like me very much. Then we did the daddy-daughter dance, bada boom, bada bing, we're best friends, right? We're as close as can be. But I realized that my own upbringing, this piece where I love to encourage people just to get curious about yourself. How do other people experience you? How do you experience other people? What's going on in your chest, man? What's up with that? And it's not a shaming or you're a bad guy sort of thing. It's just trying to be honest and inquisitive and curious. And I think that I carried so much nervousness and anxiety and worry about not being a good enough dad, that failing her and not being able to show up for her in the way that I deeply wanted to. I mean, I found out we were having a girl. I'm like reading books. Like I must read 30 books on being the girl dad, like Meg Meeker and all these doctors and writers and psychologists, man. I listened to every audiobook, all the podcasts, man. I could recite it to you. I was so terrified of not being a good dad to my daughter. To my son's pretty easy. It's like, I don't play football and play some Madden. It's like pretty easy, man. We just hang out, you know? And I truly believe that her little nervous system detected that hesitancy, that lack of belief in myself, of having what it takes to be a good girl dad or whatever it was. I didn't know that about myself. I knew that I was pretty worried about being a good dad. And it was, I mean, I have all these rules for myself. Like I don't yell at my kids. I don't yell at my wife. I'm deeply committed to that as a principle. I won't do it. Not because I'm a really good guy, but I think I'm just sufficiently terrified of the outcomes. I know what happens when you yell and scream at people. I know what it does to them. And so I was like, man, I think I'm doing my best and I'm not doing anything catastrophically bad. And I wasn't, but I really think that my nervous system carried around some significant anxiety about not being good enough. And I was able to step into a space, like right on the dancing stage, you know, wearing some ridiculous t-shirt, this little 3-year-old in the tutu, that I let my guard down in a way that was really profound. And the connection that we had showed me something within me that I could do this, that I do have what it takes. And I'm perfectly suited, just like any other man can be if he wants to be an amazing dad to a little girl. Yeah. And I think her nervous system detected it too. And I've really talked about that a lot publicly because I'm still kind of figuring out how to talk about it. But I think there's this magic in vulnerability and letting your guard down and not being so intense and serious all the time, especially with your kids and the people that you love. Showing the real you, being vulnerable, being kind and soft.
Yeah. Well, that leads me into our last couple questions. If you were to give a piece of advice to parents today, we live in a complicated world and a complicated time, right? Our parents didn't have to navigate a world where we had social media and the internet and phones and all the other demands that come at us. Even the specialization into sports or different activities at such a young age. I see so many people become self-identified with the thing that they do, and that makes up their whole identity, and they feel so pressured to go do that, to perform well, and their parents put a lot of pressure on them. If you were to give a piece of advice to parents today, what would that be?
It's a great question. I think that you have a few different types of parents, right? You have the hard charging, my kid is a baseball player, and this is our family identity is our
son's success in baseball.
Yeah, becoming the next Bryce Harper. And then you also have parents that are pretty checked out and absent. And I think I would start, I want to have a longer form conversation with a parent for sure, but I would say just love your kids and love yourself enough to love your kids. Let your guard down. The worth of your soul is not dependent on how many points your son scores in the Crash the Board tournament on some random Saturday in April. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What grade they got, what power school looks like, does not determine the worth of your soul as a parent or the worth of your kid. I watch so many young people's lives be terrorized by the fear of not performing and the lecture that's coming on the car ride home from the game or practice, or the step into my office and have a seat. And now we have to have this hour and a half lecture about how you're not measuring up. I watch teenagers that I work with clinically. I watch them do the best when their parent can simply just say, I see you and I love you and it's okay. And I want to walk this with you. I don't have some arbitrary standard that you have to chase and meet so that I will love you. But you are, for their daughters, that they are delightful, and helping their sons see that they have what it takes and that they will be right there with them every step of the way. And I think that we put so much emphasis into outcomes. Did you get the starting spot? What club basketball team are we going to take you to? And where are you going to get the most exposure? And, we're acting like sixth graders are nationally ranked at stuff. It's insane.
Yeah.
And instead, I think a return to first principles of develop a relationship. We have this idea that well, I'm not here to be my kid's friend. I'm like, okay, cool, that fine. Also, this sounds like a cop-out for not having a legitimate relationship with your kid. And I think leadership is relationships. Leadership is relationships. And we can lead our young people regardless of the title. And especially inside of families, we can lead them through love and compassion and understanding. Chill out. Be with them. Hug them. Tell them, look them in the face and tell them, I love you more than anything in the universe. And make sure that they know that. It'll change their nervous system. It'll change their life. It'll give them the ability to believe within themselves that they are anti-fragile, that they can go out into the world. And whatever happens, they might have a bad luck. Their girlfriend might dump them. They lose their spot on the team, whatever it is. And they can come home back to this safe haven where mom and dad, or whatever the makeup is there to love them regardless of the outcomes on their biology test or how many points they scored.
Love it. I see so many people who don't have relationships with their adult kids. And I tell people all the time, you get a very small window of time to build that relationship with your kids, because once they're out of the house, then they get to decide whether or not they want to have a relationship with you, right? They get to decide whether or not they want to spend time with you. And the way that you invested and build that relationship when they were a kid is what's going to determine what that looks like for the rest of their life, right? That is largely set in stone of how you build that relationship with your child. And then maybe they want to come back, maybe they don't. Do they want to hang out with you? Do they want to spend time with you? Do they want to come home for Christmas? Do they want to go golfing with you? Do they want to go watch a game with you? And so many of those things, I couldn't agree more that, I'm not here to be my kid's friend. You're right, you're not, but you are here to be their parent, and you're here to love them and to build a genuine relationship and connection with them where they want to be your friend when they become adults, right? So, no, I love that. Last question for you. Well, maybe second last question. If you were to give one piece of advice to young people today, what would that piece of advice be?
Make it cool to care. Be courageous. Find that courage within you. And maybe you got to find a couple of buddies to do it with you. But make it cool to care. To step outside of that comfort zone that says you got to dress a certain way and look a certain way and do the thing, or they'll reject you. I love talking with young people and saying, guys, just make it cool to care. Be who it is that you really are. Your identity is not in the clothes that you wear or the music that you listen to or all these other this external seeking of validation, how many likes you got on your picture on Instagram. That doesn't define you. You can make it cool to care by living your values, identifying those values. Who do I really want to be? My best friend growing up, Chris Ulmer, asked me that question. Who do you want to be? And I told him, I don't know, man, but I bet we could win state. And he was like, no, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. And it's such a good question. Who do you want to be? And then make it cool to care.
Love it. You like to read a lot. I love to read a lot. If you had one book right now that you'd recommend to people in our audience that they could read that you feel like would help make a difference in people's lives? Give one recommendation. What book would that be?
Leaders Eat Last from Simon Sinek.
Love it.
It's really good.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Garrett Kroon, everyone, appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Cam.
If people want to get hold of you or get in touch with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Krooncounseling.com. That's you can find me there if you want to reach out. Whether it's for counseling, I can always provide recommendations and referrals, or whether it's leadership development or speaking, keynote speaking. I do all that. You can reach out on the website and just directly to me. And I'd love to chat. Just anyway, I'm an extrovert. I love people. I love responding to emails and conversations.
Love it. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks.